Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and after Boris Johnson's recovery from the coronavirus, we are now being told that he is back in control. But in this video, I'd like to ask one very serious question. Was anybody else actually ever in control whilst he was ill? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So that we didn't actually have anyone in control even before Boris Johnson was struck down is debatable, especially when Michael Gove had to admit yesterday that the Prime Minister failed to attend 5 emergency Cobra meetings back in February. But after he'd been hospitalised and since recuperating, we were told that Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, was deputising. Now, even before this event, we had been informed that Raab was designated survivor, so it came as no real surprise that he would deputise. But was Dominic Raab actually in control? What sign did we see of this? What decisions did he actually make? The first thing we could say is he's Foreign Secretary. That is a very important role. It's a very senior position in government. If Dominic Raab were really deputising for the Prime Minister in the middle of an emergency where the Prime Minister is going to be really busy at all times, surely someone else should have been appointed to take over on an interim basis the role of Foreign Secretary whilst Dominic Raab was deputising as Prime Minister. This did not happen. And it's not like things had been going swimmingly and it was just a case of steady as she goes. Were that the case, it might not have been that surprising that no major decisions were made in Boris Johnson's absence. But we had calamity after calamity. Over the past couple of weeks, we've seen the forewarned shortages of PPE in hospitals reach crisis point, with some hospitals now having completely run out of certain items. We've seen increasing numbers of frontline NHS staff, nurses, doctors and paramedics struck down. We've seen reports of potentially thousands of people dying from the virus in care homes that were never given medical treatment, certainly not admitted to the apparently loads of critical care beds that we've got lying empty. We've seen the emergency critical care beds that I just mentioned there standing empty, whilst people, not just the elderly, have been denying in their own homes, denied treatment, including a 51-year-old nurse who last week died having received no care whatsoever. We've also had the news that the newfangled tests that the government spent millions on, the idea was that we could then just get a test off Amazon and do it in our own homes, in preference to the ones that we know work, but that they would have to organise some system of having us tested because we couldn't apply those ourselves. Well, it turns out these ones that the government has spent absolutely millions on don't actually work. They're utterly useless. Utterly useless. Any one of these events needed a decision to be made to correct the problem as quickly as reasonably may be expected, I should say, and yet no major decisions at all were made in Johnson's absence. Tell a lie. Matt Hancock announced badges for care workers to give them the same rights as NHS staff when it comes to coping with the lockdown measures, access to shops, stuff like that. Except that this was a bit of a fib as well, because apparently the scheme was actually set up last year and the care workers were not being given these badges at all. They have to pay for them, and quite a lot of them have been asked to pay quite a bit when you consider these are minimum wage workers, so they weren't all that keen on the idea. So I am genuinely wondering if anyone was really in charge at all. It did bring to mind reports in the right-wing press at the time of Johnson's hospitalisation that there was a bit of a power struggle going on in his absence. After all, although Johnson can name Raab as his deputy, it doesn't confer upon him any actual powers. A Prime Minister cannot name a successor. Any decisions Raab needed to make from a legal point of view could only have been made with the support of Cabinet. They would have had to have gone along with the decision that he was deputising. So were there lack of decisions because Raab was opposed by senior ministers and there really was a power struggle going on? Or was he just too thick or scared to make any? But anyway, the past is the past. Boris Johnson is now back in the driving seat. Hooray! Unfortunately, like I say, he wasn't really in control even before his illness. He pursued a strategy pushed by Vallance and Cummings, 2 unelected officials, and only changed tack when he was told how many people it would kill. I can almost imagine how it would have gone Because at the beginning we were doing it well. We were doing it right. When coronavirus only just made it to Britain, anyone displaying symptoms, we tested them, isolated them while we got the results, and then traced anyone else they'd been in contact with. All this sort of, testing and tracing and isolating, that was all happening for a very brief period of time. And if we'd have kept up with that, we'd be one of the countries that was pouring scorn on the rest of the world for being such dumbasses. We'd be one of the countries that had kept the toll really low down, but we didn't. We went for this herd immunity strategy. And you can sort of imagine, that the advisors going, "Oh, should we model it for you just to see how it's likely to pan out?" Johnson goes, no, it's fine. I understand it. They've explained it to me. We're doing this. Okay, we'll just go and model it anyway. Yeah, sure, go ahead. And then they come back with the models. Right, we've got the modelling, Prime Minister. What's the good news? You're going to kill 250,000 people. What? Maybe 500,000 people. What? No, let's change our minds, shall we? The problem is at this point is you're locking the stable door after the horse has bolted. And we have to come back to that admission from the start of the video. Boris Johnson missed 5 Cobra meetings. The Cobra meetings, what they are is they are set up when there is a national emergency in the UK. It's set up, it's supposed to be chaired by the Prime Minister, and it involves people from different agencies that would be involved in whatever needs doing to deal with the emergency. And it doesn't matter what the emergency is. There should have been a Cobra meeting for the floods, for example, to coordinate efforts there, and there wasn't. There should have been Cobra meetings right at the start of the pandemic crisis, which there wasn't. That was delayed. But even when they went ahead, 5 meetings in February that Prime Minister, who's supposed to chair them, couldn't be asked to turn up to. And that was the key month for us to act. We were told back in January we really should have been getting on it then, but February was absolutely crucial for us to determine whether we'd be one of the countries that got away with it, or whether we'd be one of the countries that ends up with some of the worst damage in the world, which is now where we're going to be. We had those warnings in January. More warning would have been nice. We could have had more warning if China wasn't trying to suppress it, granted. But we still had enough, and we had, more importantly, more warning than some countries did who did a better job than us. So we don't get to hide behind China initially making an arse of it. And as one commentator put it, imagine the chief of the Metropolitan Police missing 5 meetings about heightened terrorist activity, and then a few weeks later, the deadliest terror attack in decades takes place. And I'll continue what this person is saying. In that scenario, the chief of the Met Police would be sacked, or more realistically, they'd be made to resign. But as they say here, this is what Johnson did. Long before he was ill, the illness has got nothing to do with it. That is what he did. And then there was the news a couple of months ago that we'd sent 650,000 items of PPE to China in order to help the coronavirus. The coronavirus efforts the same. The EU did the same. All very nice, all very neighbourly. This is grand. At the time, Boris Johnson said that the risk to the UK posed by the virus was low. And again, I'll reiterate that this is not what the World Health Organization was saying weeks before. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have sent that stuff off. What I am saying is we should have looked at replenishing it bloody quickly. And, and if we couldn't, or if we didn't want to replenish it very quickly, we probably shouldn't have sent it off in the first place, if we're going to be honest. The World Health Organization were not suggesting that this was going to be contained in Asia. Not at this time, not at the time this was happening. They knew it was going global, and they told us it was going global. And now we've run out of PPE. Not because we gave so much of our stock away, but because we failed to replenish it before it was going to be needed again. And we turned down offers to be sent more. So on the one hand, I really see no evidence that anyone was in control at all during Johnson's absence. And perhaps we should be pleased that now he's back, because although he doesn't make good decisions, and he certainly doesn't make considered decisions, he does at least make decisions. And there is just that small chance, that little lingering thread we're all clinging to, that maybe he will make some good decisions over the next week if the brush with the virus has taught him a little humility, and maybe, just maybe, he starts to listen to the people who were getting it right from the start, and he'll maybe now start to make some better decisions over the coming week. We'll have to wait this week to find out. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.